Today's video, we're going to talk about adding conversion values to your secondary and primary conversion goals inside Google Ads and how this increases profit dramatically for your business and for the money you're dumping into Google Ads. A conversion happened and you can send that to Google Ads, but there's also a value component to every conversion. You need to be sending the conversion value to Google if you want the most results out of your ads. We're talking twice as much results that you will get when you send the value along with the conversion goal and the fact that it happened. And I'm not talking about just with shopping cart goals. We're talking about phone goals, goals that track appointments, anything else that you're doing, anything in general that you're tracking with Google Ads. You need a value, and adding that value will typically double your results just by having it on there. And I'm going to tell you exactly how to add it in the way that will get you those results. I'm also going to give you a direct example of how we were able to do this for another company. And you can see how this works for yourself, a local furniture seller itself. With all that said, I'm going to give you everything you need to do this for yourself. Getting into the content here. First of all, adding more goals in Google Ads will generally always make you more money from your ads, a lot more. So there's always two ways to make more money from your Google Ads spend. When it comes to tracking, you can get better quality data and you can get more data. You can get more data by having more conversion goals that track not just the purchases, but every step leading up to a purchase. You can get more data by having better quality tracking, namely server-side tracking that's going to get you 20 to 30% more conversion data compared to what they call client-side tracking. But you also can get more out of your Google Ads by sending the actual value, so you actually get more conversion data in the ad account that way. That is what we're talking about on this particular video. So one, you want to make sure you set up as many goals as possible in your account that would be all correlated with a purchase at the end of the day. If something happens that makes it more likely for them to purchase than not, you want to track that as a goal. Then you want to have a value tied to the goal that then tells Google, this goal here, when it happens, makes the person more likely to convert than this goal over here. So they can properly weight each conversion goal that you have. And then you end up with something like with this chart here that shows, hey, we're going to track people that have been on the site for a long time, people that have filled out part of my form, but not all of it, people that called, but it was a 30-second call or less. People called and it was a long conversation, then calls that were qualified, that we marked qualified. And each one of these steps leading up to a purchase, the closer they get to a purchase in terms of the conversion goal, the more we're valuing that goal. So Google will value the goals that are closer to a purchase first and more than the ones that are further away from a purchase, but will still give Google more data to optimize our ads with. Ultimately, the more data that Google has, the better, and the more accurate the data that you have is, the better, of course. And you can set up more goals to get you more data, but you also, Google's able to use the data more accurately when you add the value, and you do it in the way that I'm telling you on this video. With that said, I'm going to explain how this kind of process works, and the most ideal way to set up conversion goals for your business that I found out of spending tens of millions of dollars in Google ad spend for our clients, how to do this the best way for yourself. And that is, if you're an e-commerce business, and I'll talk about non-e-commerce a little bit later. E-commerce businesses, you're going to want to track add to carts on your e-commerce store. You're going to, as a separate goal, you want to track a separate goal for view cart views. So did they get to the cart? You're going to also want to track people that get to the checkout page separately, and you're going to want to track and people that actually check out. So they actually purchased. Of that, by the way, you track each one of those goals. Now, here's where the value comes in. For whatever they added to the cart, that's going to be your value for the add to cart goal. For whatever they added to the cart, that's going to be the value for your view cart goal, and so forth. So this is ad load dynamically generated. You can easily do this with your Google. I won't get into the details, I guess, to say all this, but you can easily do this with your shopping cart to where you send the data about the cart value, whatever they anticipated or planned on buying or actually buying, to the goal, so that the goal always has the value of what they were intending to buy. That'll put you in position for Google to optimize for not just more add to carts, but add to carts that are bigger purchases or will lead to, on average, bigger purchases. So therefore, Google's going to make you more money over time because it's going to, taking your budget, figure out the portion of the traffic that's getting bigger transaction sizes, going after that versus over here. And you may ask, by the way, again, just to clarify, why do you need to have all these steps tracked if you're going to track checkouts? Isn't that ultimately what matters? When you have this extra data, it basically multiplies or puts the conversion tracking process on steroids because Google can start to figure things out that they couldn't figure out otherwise with just the sales data. Machine learning algorithms, including with what Google has, is going to, the more data that it has to work with, the better decisions it's going to be able to make and predictions it can make. So if you have 1,000 checkouts for the Google's machine learning algorithm to look at, and you have 10,000 actual add to cart conversions for it to look at, it can make decisions from the checkout data by itself, but because they know if a person adds something to the cart, it makes it semi-likely that they're going to buy. They just simply, or figure out things that they couldn't with this checkout data alone, such as, gee, this people, when they go to this website over here before they search for pottery wheels, they are 3 times as likely to purchase. So when a person has done that, they went to that website before, let's up-regulate our bid for that style or type of person so that our ad shows a higher percentage of the time for that person moving forward. And then they find someplace else where, traffic doesn't lead to an add to cart as much. They reallocate that budget, and then therefore you start making more money moving forward. So it just gives the system more data to work with, and therefore, it's like dumping extra gas on the fire of the whole system. More than half of your results and value you get out of Google Ads is just predicated on getting more conversion data. The more of it you have racked up in your account, the better the results can get, to the point where when you launch your account today is not even 5% of the results that you're going to get out of Google Ads long term when you've racked up a massive amount of data in your ad account. And then get the extra goals, get you more data and get you the data quicker, and the value adds to everything else. Now, if you're an e-commerce shop and you take orders through the phone, you should track those orders through something called offline conversion tracking. So if they call and then you put the order through the virtual credit card terminal that you have, you put their offline conversion tracking process and you track that as well. Same thing if they come through the form and then you process their order offline. Why? Because then the system can see all the orders and make much better quality decisions on your behalf. That said, you should also track phone calls itself and you should track forms itself. Why? Because those things are correlated strongly with purchases. And with that said, though, the question is, and I get this question all the time, and the reason why I made this video is for this reason, how do you add a value to the phone call goal? Well, this is really simple. What you do is you go and first of all, you're tracking your calls with CallRail or a program like it. I would just recommend CallRail. You find all the calls in CallRail, because there's the call-in number there listed there, the recording, and then you compare your data there to your shopping cart backend, and every person who called who later on bought, or at the least has the same last name because the wife could have initially called and then the husband put the order through, you're going to take all those purchases that later on occurred as a result of your phone calls, and you're going to take that revenue amount divided by the number of calls you got, and then that's your default value for your phone call conversion. You do the same thing with the form fills. Ultimately ends up tells Google which one of these are more valuable, the phone call or the form fill goal. The one that produces the most revenue per conversion, it's weighted higher by Google and therefore makes you more results in the future, get you more results in the future that you wouldn't got otherwise. That in itself, it makes a massive difference in your results. Just that one thing alone in your e-commerce business, of which I'm going to talk about in relation to the case study I'm going to go over here a little bit later. Now, to break this down though, so you just simply take the revenue that your company generated off of the people that initially did the goal, divided by the number of conversions, and that's your default value for the goal. So for the sales goals related to tracking sales, you just upload the sales itself and that's it. For any goals that are not related to the checkout, you actually calculate what the value is going to be, and that's a static value that you assign to that goal moving forward. And I would recommend doing a 90-day period so you have a good, strong number to work with. Knowing that if you use maximize conversion value bidding strategy, whatever goal has the most value in it, that's going to be the goal that Google optimizes for more. So they're going to try to optimize for it in that case. If the phone calls have generated more revenue per call, then it's going to push for phone calls more than forms. And that's exactly what you want the system to do for you on your behalf. Now, on top of all this, if you're a non-e-commerce company, you're generating leads. If you want the most results, and this is the way that I found gets the most results, running all of our clients' campaigns and been doing this for a long, long time now. You track time on site. Anybody who's been on the site for more than 2 minutes, you track it as a goal. You track partial form fills itself. You track full form fills, so they got actually filled out the entire form. You track short calls, under 30 seconds. You track longer calls. You track qualified calls. You verified the call itself or form fill was asking about the things that you actually can do. Then you track appointments separately. You track quotes on proposals separately, and you track sales separately. You do the same exact thing as I mentioned up here in terms of valuing these goals. The sales goal itself is simple. The value is whatever the sale was, the transaction amount. The quotes goal, that's simply whatever you quoted them in terms of the quote. That's the value itself. For the rest of them, it's just like I talked about with the phone and the form goal up here for the e-commerce companies. So you take all the appointments that you set and the revenue that you generated thereof divided by the number of appointments, and that's the default value assigned to that goal. Same thing with the qualified call goal, same thing with the long call goal, same thing with the short call goal, and so forth. Now, you can actually break this down into more steps if you want, or less. Generally speaking, the more steps you have, the better off you're going to be. It's just more overhead to kind of manage. This is really useful to add all these extra steps, particularly at the beginning of what you're doing, because it's going to allow you to ramp up your spend and sales much quicker than otherwise. It's going to get minimum data quicker than it needs to do well. You're going to get that minimum data quicker. That said, long term, it'll also make you more money, given that that extra data is going to be a secondary source of information for the algorithm to optimize your ads with. So with that said, what do you do? So here is how you handle it. When you start out your account, you track all these as primary goals, meaning Google admits that they use this for steering of your campaigns. With that said, once you get at least 30 partial form fill goals, you're going to take this time on site conversion goal and mark it secondary. Google says that the secondary goals that you have marked secondary in your ad account, they don't use it for bid optimization or steering of your campaigns. We've found out recently that this is not the case. They use it less than the primary goals, but they absolutely use it nevertheless. What you end up doing is one by one, you end up marking these goals secondary. As you get enough data down on the bottom goals here, you don't need to have all these other goals marked primary as well. So what you're doing is you're telling Google, hey, pay attention to these lower goals here, not so much the ones up here, even though you can also look at it as well. So when you get 30 long calls, you're going to put the short calls goal in secondary, and so on and so forth, as you work down the list until you eventually one day, the only goal you have marked primary is the sales goal. Same thing, by the way, with the e-commerce guys, the checkout goal and the offline sales goal itself will be the only goals you have marked primary. All the other goals you're going to upkeep and maintain. They're just going to be marked secondary, so Google will know not to pay attention to that. Number one, it's also extra data to utilize. Frankly, because it's smart that Google does utilize the secondary goal data. What they're going to do is they're going to test some of the stuff, their decisions they're making based upon that secondary goal data. And if it starts to realize the secondary goal data is useful, they're going to start using it a lot more. It's really just at the end of the day, the data that's there, if it uses it and it realizes it can get more results with it than without it, they'll definitely use it. Otherwise, they won't use it. But that's exactly what you want to do. In terms of creating a value to your conversion goals, you should always have one if you want the most results out of your ads. The question is how to add that. Well, of course, I went over what that is. You simply have to figure out and backtrack, going back 90 days, the amount of sales revenue that was stemmed from each one of those people that converted on one of those goals. Now, that said, you're probably wondering, on the time on site, how do you even value that one? There's technically still a way to do this. You could use a software like Hotjar and do a video recording of the screen. And if a person's on the screen for more than 2 minutes, and then you see them form or call, then you would know person's tied together there. You may not want to do that because it's too much hassle, but that's how you would actually do it itself. Respectively, you can do the same thing with email clicks. Some people track whether somebody clicks on an email address to open up an email window or browser on their screen and then email the company. You could do the same thing there. But that all said, you're going to use offline conversion tracking to set the value if you can, or the purchase tracking data if you can as the value. If you can't, you're going to use the methodology I gave you. That's going to give you a ton more results than you would get otherwise. So your best is to use the actual real data if you can. Otherwise, you're going to guesstimate it in terms of your value by taking the sales that you do get and divide it by the number of conversions you got, and that's your value, as I mentioned before. In a nutshell, that's how you get the most results from ads. Now, I'm going to get into my case study here to show you how much this stuff can work. That said, if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, you absolutely should. I have the best information online about how to make money with ads. You're not going to find better information elsewhere, I promise you, because I spend 40 hours a week doing ad strategy at our firm to find out what works the best at our firm. I've got a great blog on my site as well. If you haven't seen it yet, you should go check it out. You can find that at guaranteedppc.com/blog, where there's step-by-step information there for you also on how to make millions of dollars a year running ads for your business. In addition to this, if you have any questions, by the way, anything I'm covering here or any marketing related question, leave me a comment below. I get back to every single person who leaves me a question or comment on this channel, usually within 24 hours. You can also reach me through my Discord link. The link is in the description. Beyond that as well, you can reach out to me through my site at guaranteedppc.com. I, by the way, do coaching and consulting both at our agency. I also do done-for-you services where, you know, whatever you're doing now, or if you haven't even started a campaign, what our agency does is say, hey, look, we'll get you this much more sales results or sales results in general. Until we do that, we're not going to charge you a fee yet. And no other agency out there does anything like this, which should tell you something about the quality of the service we're providing. If you would like that from our agency, I can get you an estimate of results and projection going out 8 quarters if you reach out to me at my agency. I also have ad templates available. If you are in a market that we've already worked in, I can sell you the winning ads, landing pages, all of it that works for your market already. You copy paste those into your ad account and get the same results we did in another city or country that, you know, we're operating in already or have operated in the past. And it's all fair game for you to use it. Ultimately, we can tell you the results you're going to get with it up front. And of course, with the prices on the template up front. But you absolutely should not, most likely, go through all the hassle that we did to get these results when we already did it for you. So I've been in hundreds of markets. Chances are I've got the template that you ultimately need and want. You should at least reach out and find out. Going back to the case study here. We had a local furniture seller here. For this local furniture seller itself, it is an e-commerce site primarily, but they also have people coming into the store and buy itself. What we did was we tracked itself, everything that I set up here. That said, also though, we did not track itself the phone calls, the forms with the value, updating the value for these 2 goals with the static value. And we did not add these goals right here by itself and the related value. How much of a increase in results do you think that in and itself had on our results? Just simply doing these simple things, going from pure sales tracking to tracking these extra steps and then associating a value with each one to supplement the sales data. Because we primarily track our results with this account by how much total revenue that the company brings in, given that it's a little tricky to track all the sales because some people, they come in and they're not trackable necessarily. We've improved our system since then to track in-store sales. What I can tell you is we had the previous year before making this change here, as I just described, a 37% year-over-year increase in sales, which is what we had. That's the growth that we had in sales that year versus the previous. When we added the extra conversion value for these extra mini steps here, we went from a 37% year-over-year increase in sales to a 61% year-over-year increase in sales itself, just by doing that one simple thing. And of course, we did some other stuff that we had during that year, but it's very minimal because this is a client we've had for a while. And for that matter, by the way, if you set up the foundation on your accounts pretty well, you're not going to, after a couple years of setting up your campaigns, you're not going to have monumental shifts in your account. You'll add a little bit here, a little bit there. And whatever we did add, by the way, should be accounted for just in the extra 37% that we should have got anyway. And technically, your year-over-year growth in sales slows down a little bit each year, whereas we almost doubled our year-over-year sales growth. And certainly it was coming from this extra revenue data or conversion value data that we're adding in and just adding the extra data in general. Will this actually get you twice as much results like I said at the start of the video? Absolutely it will. If you're talking about also a lead generation account, where this is going to even more. Why? Because on lead generation accounts, you're getting so little data in terms of sales data and so little lead data because your cost per click is probably high. You don't have a huge budget. The extra data matters even more. We're doing this on all the accounts basically that we manage now because it increases the results so much since I started testing this. Because we found out, that secondary goals are used by Google quite a bit, not just primary. They use the value portion of the goals a lot as well, and therefore started to do this on all of the accounts that we manage. So, and you want to do this for yourself as well. Anyway, you get the general idea here. Whether you get a 30, 40% increase in year-over-year sales or growth in sales, adding a simple value component to your goals, or you get 100%, it's still worth doing either way because it's so simple to do. You know, it is a hassle to one time figure out the sales that from all your qualified leads, how much sales revenue you got, and then doing the division. You've done it once, you're done. And then you now are going to enjoy more sales results moving forward indefinitely because not only are you going to get a great result right away in terms of extra data, but every subsequent year, you're going to get more and more data accumulated that you wouldn't have had before. And it's going to cause you to your compound and grow even faster than it would have otherwise without it. And that's the key fact here. So whatever it does right away, that's just the starting. Every year, it should actually be better and better. So that's why you want to do it. Having the accumulation of data in your account is like filling up a piggy bank. You start putting coins in the piggy bank up front, there's not really much you're getting from it, but the fuller it gets, the more the value is. And there's a point where it gets totally full and you can cash out. And that's when the millions are made from your account. So what you're really doing at the beginning is paying to fill up the piggy bank. Gets filled, your account gets filled with data. Now the results are massive because your account knows exactly where the customers are and how to go after them. And they prefer to show you before anybody else for your customers because you help them better than anybody else, most likely, or you've set yourself up for that. So anyway, hopefully that makes sense. I'm going to wrap it up with that. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. If you want to see another video, click here. It is one of my best ones.